Hi everyone, let's talk about Mars. Mars is going to be stationing retrograde tomorrow, the 6th of December, certainly for us in the UK. Of course, those in Australia, it will happen on the 7th, so apply your own time zones. But at 23:34 GMT on the 6th of December, Mars is going to station retrograde, and he's going to be retrograde for a period of just under 3 months. During his retrograde, he will actually be retrograding back into the sign of Cancer, not the place that Mars particularly feels comfortable in, because it's a very feminine sign, it's a very nurturing sign, and it's a very feelings-orientated sign. Mars wants to get things done. It's that masculine energy, it's the drive. And Cancer is sort of saying to Mars at that point, and certainly when he was in Cancer just recently, let's feel the feelings. And that's something that the masculine essence doesn't want to feel. We have that masculine essence within all of us. We want to take action. We want to have that drive to take action. But this is all about slowing down a little bit. Retrogrades are, of course, periods of introspection. So this is where we look at action that is needed, but we're introspecting on it. And it just so happens that during the retrograde, we've got to feel the feelings once again when he goes back into Cancer and then he stations direct. So he's going to be retrograding in Leo for about a month, because the 6th of January, again, for those of us on GMT in the UK, that's when he will retrograde back into Cancer. And he will then move back in Cancer until the 24th of February, and that's when he will station direct. So then he's got to move back through the sign of Cancer back into Leo. So we do need to appreciate what's going on with the change of signs and that heavy masculine energy that's at play, but also the opposition energy that's going to be coming up. And I will show you this on the charts very shortly. Now, that's not the end of it all, as you can imagine, because astrology, there's many layers, it's a bigger picture to look at. The day after, so this is the 6th for us in the UK. On the 7th, we've got Neptune coming out of retrograde. So we'll have Mars going into retrograde, and then the day after, we've got Neptune stationing direct and coming out of retrograde. So the fog might be lifting. And I, for one, I'm glad about that. I've got particular sort of transits with Neptune and my own natal Neptune, and I am a Pisces. So it is quite an intense time. So I'm glad that actually Neptune is going to be stationing direct. The fog might be lifting, there might be a bit more clarity, but we also might have had during the retrograde some revelations, some introspection on where we might have been self-sabotaging, or perhaps where there's been illusionary energy or deceptive energy. That shadow side of Neptune that we need to look at as well. But also it's enabled us to get in touch with our intuition more. And that's very important because of course, these transitions that we're going through, these shifts that we're going through, the healing that we're still doing. But of course, moving forward into the age of Aquarius, Pluto is now in Aquarius. I'm sure you know that. So this is about us moving forward into this new reality. And we've had to get in touch with our intuition as part of that. So the retrograde has helped us, but it might have still caused some confusing energy. So the fog may be lifting for a lot of us at that point. But interestingly, before that even happens, we've got Venus moving into Aquarius. And when Ceres then joins Venus 3 hours after, this is in the morning of the 7th for GMT, they will both form an exact conjunction with Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius, because of course he's in Aquarius, but he moves slow. He's going to be in that sign for 20 years. So he's still at 0 degrees and he will be there for a bit of time. But Venus moving into Aquarius, Ceres joining, then they've got that kind of triple conjunction, if you like, but it's masculine energy of Pluto with that feminine energy of Venus and Ceres. So I've got the chart and I'll show you that as well. Not only that, we're still in Mercury retrograde, as you can tell, because I almost couldn't say Mercury then, but we have got Mercury retrograde still going on, and he will station direct on the 15th of December. Again, apply your own time zones as appropriate, but that's certainly for us in the UK on GMT. But he will station direct the same day that we have a full moon in Gemini, and Mercury rules Gemini. So there's a lot of big energy still coming up in the month of December, just when we're wanting to really, ease ourselves into this Christmas period. And for many of us, that period of relaxation, which is much needed and much warranted. But, this is about, the energy is still present. It's still reminding us of stuff. certainly in relation to this profound transformation that we're going through because of the shifts that are happening. And next year in January, you know, there's more stuff going on, including the nodal shift. So the North Node and South Node will actually move back into Pisces and Virgo. So they're going to change from Aries and Libra into Pisces and Virgo. And that is going to be big. And I will do another video on that, okay, because that's coming up. Let's get into the chart. Okay. So first of all, and I might have to just take my glasses off for this one so I can get closer to the screen. Okay, so I want to show you, and I'll try and do this as kind of briefly as possible. I've got quite a few charts. So Mars stations retrograde in Leo, 6th of December, 23:34 GMT. Apply your own time zones as appropriate. So it's going to be the 6th of December for most of us in the world, but Australia, it will be the 7th, okay? So we've got Mars there, 6 degrees of Leo. So he will start at 6 degrees of Leo. And just referring to my notes here, he will actually then be 17 degrees, I think it is, of Cancer when he stations direct, but that will be obviously in February. So this is the moment, this is the freeze frame of the cosmos when he stations retrograde. And you'll see some lines here. If you're familiar with my reports, you'll know that I am guided to particular aspects within the chart, even though there's a lot more going on. Astrology is the bigger picture here. But we've got Mars in opposition to this energy down here that is partly in Capricorn and partly in Aquarius. Now, of course, Leo is opposite Aquarius. So Pluto is like the main energy here. And that is that masculine face-off energy that's been there for a time. It's not exact, but there is still that sort of energy there. And of course, during his retrograde, he will retrograde back over 0 degrees of Leo. So he is going to then be in exact opposition with Pluto at that point. But the salient point here is we've got Venus and Ceres right at the end of Capricorn. So they are at the anaretic degree and they will be moving into Aquarius, as I mentioned, the following day to form that exact conjunction. They're conjunct at the moment because they're close, but it's not an exact conjunction. They're at the tail end of Capricorn. So the anaretic degree is quite an intense degree. It's the end of a cycle because it's the end of the zodiac sign in terms of planetary body degrees before it moves into another sign. So this is reminding us about closing out these cycles. And where Venus is concerned, this is about, you know, where are we investing our Venus energy and our values, our Venus values? Where are we investing our time, energy, love, money, resources, attention? Is that in alignment with the physical reality that we're wanting to experience? Okay, the seeds that we're planting for that future that we are wanting in accordance with the profound transformation that's going on. Is it in alignment with that? So we're being reminded of that at this point of Mars stationing retrograde. So of course, Mars in Leo, there is that courage within the drive to take action. It's the masculine essence. And I don't need to point out to you that we've got masculine in opposition to feminine energy here, because we've got Mars opposite Venus, not to mention Ceres, and Pluto is also there as well. So there is masculine essence facing off. But Mars and Venus, you know, the counterparts of astrology here, the planets that are counterparts, if you look at it like that, they are in opposition. So there is a push-pull type energy. And because Venus is there at that final degree of Capricorn, it's those investments. So, okay, we need to introspect now. Mars is kind of needing to introspect where courage is perhaps needed in terms of action, standing up for things, that masculine drive to take action. But we also need to look at where we're investing our Venus energy. And the push-pull element, is that in alignment with the action we want to take? Is our action in alignment with where we want to invest our energy? So it is that push-pull. But also, yes, the masculine and feminine within us. And that can be reflected back to us in our external situations. So within us, we have masculine and feminine essence. And we are going to have, you know, more of an identification, you know, with one of those over the other, because our core essence is going to be masculine or feminine, but we have both within. So we have that nurturing creator within, and we also have the drive to take action. Depending on what else is going on, you know, one might be more of a priority than the other. but we're striving ultimately for balance. Well, here we've got them in opposition. So it's a push-pull situation. What do we need to focus on first? Maybe there's a bit of tension here, and especially with Venus at those final degrees in conjunction with Ceres there, because this is about our physical reality. So we've got to slow down, hold our horses in terms of the action, and understand where we need courage. And we've got to nurture ourselves through that in our physical reality. And that is what could create that tension, because perhaps we don't want to slow down and nurture ourselves through it. Perhaps we want to just drive through and take the action. Or perhaps, you know, we know exactly where we want to invest our Venus energy, but we need to find the courage from somewhere. So the push-pull energy comes into play there as well. Now, Mars is in trine, which is harmonious, to the North Node in Aries. Okay, so that's also fire energy. That's Aries is ruled by Mars, so of course there is that link there, and there is sovereignty to Aries. There is that kind of warrior spirit, because it's all about the self, because Aries rules the first house. So the harmony here is really needing to focus on ourself and our path forward, our purpose. So the direction in which we're heading, because that's ultimately what our North Node is. So if we're focused on the direction in which we're heading, and we know this is what we need to do to achieve that, okay, that's where the Mars energy can work with us in that way to understand where the courage may be needed in order to then move forward on our path. But this is now a period of introspection for Mars, because it's a retrograde. So we've got to look at this from the perspective of our path, from the perspective of our purpose, and from the perspective of the self. So we need to focus on the self and what we want. Now, the other aspect about Leo is about being seen, you know, having that recognition for who we are as an authentic soul. So of course, if we've got to now introspect and hibernate, to use that term, perhaps we feel like, well, we can't be seen in the way that we want to be seen, and that can be also frustrating, but that is part of our path. There is a trine here, it's harmony. So in order to become this sovereign being, we need to go within and understand how we can apply that action through strategy, because of course taking action, we can strategize, we can plan what we need to do, that's still taking action. But the masculine drive might want to surge ahead, and we've got to slow down a bit here and focus on where we're actually going. What do we want? What's in alignment with our sovereign principles, ultimately? I've also marked up another trine here, because that's the only couple of things where Mars is in the mix at this point. Okay, it gets a bit heavier further on, and I'm going to pull that up. But Chiron, also in Aries, so collectively, our healing journey relates to our sovereignty. Currently, we are healing our sovereignty. We are understanding what we need to do to become more sovereign in ourselves and to believe in ourselves. That's a big part of this. Now, there is a trine, again, harmonious aspect, between Chiron and the sun being in Sagittarius, of course. Mercury is close by, Mercury still in retrograde, as we know. There is a conjunction, 2 degrees difference, it's not exact, but the trine is with the sun, not with Mercury. So the soul essence of the cosmos is supporting our healing journey as a collective when it comes to our sovereignty. Now, this is also fire energy. Sagittarius is very motivational and also very kind of eager to learn and discover things. It's all about the quest. It's all about, okay, I want to shoot my arrow in the direction of this. That's what I want. And it's a journey of discovery to get there. And it is very much about being adventurous. Also, it is the quest. So we need to understand that our soul wants to experience these things and wants us to go on an adventure of our own purpose, of our own path. And this is also healing our sovereignty, because as we step into more of that fire energy, you know, when you think of Leo with the courage and wanting to be seen, wanting to put ourselves out there for who we are, and also we want to go on this quest, we want to aim for something, and we want to go on this journey to discover it. There's enthusiasm, there's motivation, and that's informing our sovereignty, and vice versa. We're becoming more sovereign. We know what we want, we know what we stand for, we know what we will tolerate and what we won't tolerate. So we've got a clearer path forward of the direction in which we're heading. And, you know, with Sagittarius, with the glyph there, there is an arrow. So it is about pointing that arrow in the direction of where we're going. With Mercury there being in retrograde, of course, we're introspecting at the moment about potentially where our communication and expression might be holding us back. That could be from self-limiting thoughts and beliefs in that respect, how we communicate with ourselves, but also in our communications with other people. Where do we need to open up a bit more? Sagittarius is expansive energy. So Mercury in retrograde, perhaps we feel like we're having to limit our expression at the moment whilst we gather what we're doing during this period of introspection, but also understanding, and I said this in a previous social media post, how significant our communication and our expression as an authentic soul, of course, is when it comes to our path. So by us truly stepping into that embodiment of who we are as somebody holding a metaphorical bow and arrow and saying, that's what I want, that's what I'm going for, with that confidence, that's very motivational and inspiring. It's allowing for that expansion and it's allowing us to move forward, but also motivating and empowering other people to do the same. So have we kind of undervalued the significance of that when we do that? You know, how empowering that can be for other people. And perhaps we've not realized how significant that is by us explaining our journey, what we've had to experience, and now we're moving forward in this direction because we are a sovereign soul. That is going to inspire other people. So this is where it's very important during the introspection period of a retrograde to understand what the planet is telling us to do, what the sign is telling us to do, of course, where it is in your natal chart, what house it might be transiting, what other things are going on. There is a bigger picture here, of course. I'm just talking about collectively here, but there is a closeness to the sun. So there is close proximity to the soul's essence here. So by us being our unique soul essence, aiming for where we want to go, this is enabling that motivation to come through. And okay, Mars is happening to be a bit quiet at the moment because perhaps Venus is needing to speak a bit. Okay, so take that as you will. The feminine wants to speak about the investment of her energy in these areas because she wants to plant the seeds for the reality she wants to experience. And Mars is having to say, okay, so maybe I can't fully take action in the way that I want to at the moment, but I can strategize because I know I want to be seen and recognized for this. I know perhaps I've got to work on a bit of courage for this, and ultimately that's going to make me stronger as a result. I know where I want to shoot my arrow towards, and I know this is going to be a journey, a quest of discovery. I'm learning about myself all the time, but that's motivational and inspiring. And I can actually understand now how I've limited my own expression, and that might have been holding myself back. But actually, as I open up my expression, it can bring in all these wonderful things for me. And that's part of my healing journey, healing my sovereignty, and it propels me further forward on my path towards sovereignty. Okay, that's what we're looking at here. It's the start of his retrograde. Okay, now I am going to just show you here for the UK. All right, so bearing in mind this is just for the UK. This is the moment that I've just shown you, Mars station in retrograde. So for the UK, based on the UK's natal chart, this is happening in the first house of the self. Okay, so there is very much an introspection needed about the courage needed within oneself when it comes to what the self wants. And the opposition energy is straddling the 6th and 7th house. So, you know, where do we need the courage to kind of step up when it comes to our daily routines and schedules, and also where we are of service to other people? Venus being there, are we investing our time and energy in the right people who we are of service to? Do we need to step that up a bit? Ceres there just in the 7th house, so you know there's not much in it, as you can see, but she's kind of over there saying, well, okay, I'm in the house of relationships with people, places, things, and I'm here with Pluto. Venus is going to join me very shortly, but whilst I'm here, let's look at the seeds we want to plant within our relationships. So relationships with people, what seeds do I want to plant here in terms of the physical reality and how that's transforming? and maybe what courage I need with that Mars opposition in order to make that happen. Relationships with places. Okay, so do I need to put down roots, so to speak, in this area? Do I need to think about moving? How is that going to transform things? That opposition energy, because Mars might feel like action can't be taken if you want to move somewhere at this time, because other things need to fall into place first. So it's all about looking at the bigger picture and what it might mean. Of course, we look at well-being as part of the 6th house as well. So this is to serve our well-being, because we need to be our own authentic leader of our own life. But this relates to our physical reality. And Capricorn energy, although it's great for focus, it can be quite harsh, because that's Saturn's sign. So, you know, we are understanding through the lessons that we're being taught by Saturn of where we do need to invest our time and energy more. Perhaps we've been doing that in the wrong places, in the wrong people. So it's looking at all of that and how that might be challenging the action we want to take, the courage we need to call forward, and the recognition that we want for what we're doing. But it has to come from a place of the self, as well as looking at our relationships with people. So it is that opposition energy. Okay. The trine that is there from Mars to the North Node is in the 9th house there. Okay, so that's Sag's house, but obviously we've got Aries and Pisces there. And then we've got the 10th house in play with the 5th house, where we've got the Sun and Chiron. So certainly from that, the 5th house, the heart-centered place, and actually, yes, our expression, when you think of that creative expression, but just that expression from the heart space in whatever way, this is what makes my heart happy. So that's what I want to do. That's where I want to shoot my metaphorical bow and arrow, and how that can work in harmony with our inner authority. Because when we understand that and we stand up for ourselves and what we want, that is enhancing our inner authority. But also, as our inner authority gets stronger and we stand up for ourselves from a sovereign perspective, of course, that's going to make us more sure about what does make us feel good in the heart space, where we do want to kind of like express ourselves from the heart space, because we know this is my inner authority and I am going to stand up for what I want. So they work hand in hand. North Node, 9th house, as I was saying. So discovery, again, learning on the path of sovereignty. And also because Neptune is close there, what our intuition has been telling us, what we've been learning from our intuition in terms of what we want and how that serves us in that way. Okay, beautiful. Now, before I go on to the other Mars charts, I am going to just show you the moment, the day after that Venus, should I just say Venus? Venus, double whammy there. Venus, Ceres and Pluto form this exact conjunction. So, okay, Mars goes retrograde 23:34 GMT on the 6th of December. And interestingly, on the 7th of December, so later than this chart, it's actually 23:43. Excuse me, for Neptune stationing direct. So at the moment, you'll see on this chart with the red digits down there, he is still retrograde at this particular point, because this is 9:14 GMT on the 7th. Apply your own time zones as appropriate. But this is the moment, because this is when Ceres joins Venus and Pluto. So 3 hours prior to this, Venus ingresses into Aquarius at 6:14. And then 3 hours later, Ceres joins, and then we've got that triple conjunction. So Venus and Pluto are going to be conjunct exact for a period of time, and then Ceres joins the mix. So I include Ceres here because it is that additional expansive feminine energy, but it's also relating to those seeds that we want to plant. I keep saying about this, and this is about aligning with the new reality, Aquarius energy, and how we want to innovate going forward to be our unique self in our endeavors and our investments with Venus in Aquarius, and perhaps connecting with a lot of people, because Aquarius rules the 11th house of connections with others. So it's multifaceted. There's definitely a uniqueness to Aquarius. Okay, and Pluto is there. This is the profound transformation that we're going through, the shift into the age of Aquarius that we know. Realities are changing. So our investments in things needs to change, doesn't it, in order for us to experience a new reality? Otherwise, we're in a kind of new reality, but we're still investing in the same things. So we're actually in an old paradigm of that reality. Yeah, so we need to kind of like roll with the times. I've marked up here the moon at this point will be 29 degrees of Aquarius at this particular moment. So of course the moon's going to then move into Pisces, sensitive place for the moon to be, but at this point at the anaretic final degree of Aquarius. So again, quite harsh, can be quite harsh on the feelings, but again, wanting to maybe connect with others and to feel different things, to kind of feel a variety of feelings about how this is all going. Now you can see from what I've marked up on the chart, there is a lot going on here. And I'll try and cover it as briefly as I can. We've got Mars over here. We know Mars has just gone into his retrograde period, and Mars is there in trine to Mercury and also in trine to the North Node still from before, which is what I've said. But this trine to Mercury now is definitely saying about, okay, let's look at our communication and how we do need to reflect on the significance of our expression in our endeavors moving forward. Okay, so I've covered that just before, but it's a reminder of that. The opposition energy, of course, still going to Pluto, Venus and Ceres. Okay, but more of that opposition with the signs Leo and Aquarius. Now, when we look at the conjunction between Pluto, Venus and Ceres, we look at all the other things going on. So we've got a couple of trines, we've got a sesqui square, we've got a couple of semi-squares, and we've got a sextile. Okay, so there are some minor challenges. There's no squares, but there's minor challenges. And then there's harmonious aspects. So let's look at the sesqui square here that's going across to Jupiter. Jupiter in retrograde, of course. Okay, and then we've got semi-squares going to Saturn and Pars Fortuna in Pisces, and also the Sun. So this is where it could, this kind of moment, I suppose, of facing up to the new reality and looking, really seriously looking at where we're investing our time, energy, love, resources, money, based on the new reality that we are wanting to experience, and how that can almost challenge us in a way to look at what the soul wants to discover, what the soul wants to learn, and how we can motivate ourselves through that. Okay. But because we've also got this semi-square to Saturn and Pars Fortuna, it feels like, okay, there might be this awareness of further lessons that we still need to learn, dare I say it. So it's almost like a recognition because of the growth. It's a positive thing, even though it's showing up as a minor challenge here. But it's a positive thing to recognize that perhaps we still need to discover something. So the soul might be saying, okay, appreciate now Pluto, Venus, Ceres, you're in Aquarius, you're reminding us, you're heightening the energy of this new reality. And really got to make sure that, yes, whatever we're trying to plant so that we can reap the rewards of those harvests, you know, for our new reality, we've got to invest in the right people, the right things, the right places. We've got to, you know, put our attention in the right places, our love, our Venus values, our money, you know, all of that. And our energy is such a valuable resource as well, by the way. So there's a reminder of that. Thank you very much, the three of you. And I know that we've got to plant these seeds for our own future because we are in charge of our own profound transformation. But perhaps I still need to discover something first, you know, on a soul level. And it could simply be about the significance of our expression going forward. But if we've not fully understood that and discovered it, that's where the Mars retrograde might also help, because we've got to have the courage to find that within us. But also with the Saturnian lessons, you know, understanding that Saturn in Pisces, you know, he's obviously now direct, and he's in Pisces, the house of the divine, wanting to get us in alignment with our spiritual truth. So that is through lessons and through tests that we've had to go through. And those of you resonating with this will know what I'm talking about, because they have been no joke. And he will put us through the mill when it comes to getting us in alignment with our spiritual truth. Because if we don't understand through lessons and tests. We have to face them again to really learn the lesson, okay? Because he is a taskmaster and he is devoid of emotion. So he takes emotion out of it. And it's like, I don't care about the emotion. We're getting this done. So it reminds us about the work we still need to do, inner work or outer work, whatever it might be, okay? Take it as literal or metaphorical as you wish. But with past Fortuna there as well, our success is tied up in that. So we need to embody that ethereal essence, but appreciate the lessons that Saturn's teaching us in order to move forward. And that is what we need to do to embark upon this new reality. You know, Saturn is still going to be in Pisces for a little time. We're just over halfway of his period in there, and it's already felt like long. I'm a Pisces, so I think I'm feeling it a lot. Other Pisces out there will be feeling it a lot. You know, before he moves into the next sign. So this is getting us in alignment with our spiritual truth. So yes, we might still need to discover, and we might have that awareness of, okay, appreciate that, but in order for me to innovate and move forward with that Aquarius energy, I have got to understand some things. I've got to really find that inner motivation, because I've still got to discover something, and that might be through another lesson. And of course, you know, another minor challenging energy with the Sesky square to Jupiter is sort of saying, okay, it might feel like it's challenging our expansion because we've got to still focus on those things. We've still got to learn some lessons here. But actually, growth is happening all throughout this. Excuse me. So even though there is a square that I can see that's going from Jupiter to Saturn, that's where the challenge is. It's challenging our growth, but we do still grow through these moments. So it feels challenging. We can feel the challenge of how that might be internally, because Jupiter is retrograde. So we're looking at inner expansion. This is all about us expanding inside. So we're changing, we're shifting. That's a lot to deal with. So it can feel challenging. Okay, but it's all for our highest good. Now let's look at the positives. We've got a sextile that's going across to the North Node. So yes, this is still in alignment with what we're trying to do and achieve on our sovereign path forward. And we know that there is that trine from the North Node to Mars. So it's in alignment with the action we need to take, but we need to understand through the introspection, the courage that we need, and facing up to being seen and recognized for who we are. Okay, and that could also be tied in with a lesson that Saturn's teaching us. Okay, and the other trine is actually going from Ceres, Venus, and Pluto to the South Node, and there is one that's going to Uranus as well. Okay, and Uranus is retrograde. Uranus rules Aquarius, and Uranus is the planet of change. It can be sudden change, it can be unexpected change, but there is definitely change, and it's got to be in alignment with our worth and values. So again, it might be that the minor challenging energy we've seen there is that understanding that, okay, perhaps I still don't feel fully worthy enough of this new reality that I want for myself, and I know I've got some healing to do. So there is an awareness there. It might still feel challenging because I'm having to experience the Saturnian tests. But if it's getting me in alignment with my worth and values, I know that change is going to come from that as well. And with the South Node in the mix, okay, I have to say that this is about where we've come from. So there's harmony because we're moving into that Aquarian energy, new reality, investing in the right things for us moving forward as a unique soul, and understanding that where we've come from, okay, if it's not been fair or balanced or harmonious, that's what's prompted the change. We're moving more in the direction of sovereignty. Okay, we want to lay the foundation of fairness as we're moving forward, but also past life karma in this lifetime has had to be addressed and cleansed. So that could also be another lesson that's tied into the mix. But all of that is coming up in a harmonious aspect here to promote that change and to provoke that change as well, I will say, but also to encourage us to step into that new reality, because we're moving away from that through lessons that we've had to learn and face. Okay, so it's for our highest good. It's helping us in that way. Now, I mentioned before about the nodal shift that's coming. That's on the 11th of January. And because the nodes always move backwards, they are going to move into Pisces and Virgo. So the South Node will move into Virgo at that point. And I will do another video on this, but that's going to be significant as well with this nodal shift. Okay, so at the moment, we're trying to lay this fair foundation. We want things to be balanced. We want things to be harmonious. We want things to be reciprocal. And maybe we've had to close out cycles that haven't been that. Maybe we've had to heal from situations that haven't been that. Maybe we have had to close out cycles and deal with karma relating to unfairness, unjust situations. Okay, so take it as it resonates. But that's just to show you the chart. This is the day after Mars starts his retrograde. Okay, right. Now, going back to Mars, okay, just to show you, is it this one here? I think it is. Sorry, I've got quite a lot here. This is when he retrogrades back into Cancer as part of his retrograde. So he starts off on the 6th of December. Well, fast forward a month, and he's then at 29 degrees of Cancer. So he is then moved back into the sign of Cancer. Okay, so it's 10:45 GMT on the 6th of January. Apply your own time zones as appropriate. And you can still see there's some lines here. So it's definitely a lot more going on than compared to the start of his retrograde. And we've got a couple of squares that are going up here to Vesta and Lilith. Okay, we've got a semi-square going to Jupiter. That's there. And we know Jupiter was just in the mix, you know, what I was just focusing on with the Venus energy, etc. We've also got a sesqui-square going across to Saturn. But then the harmonious aspects, we've got the sextile going to the South Node, and we have got a trine going across to the North Node, and Neptune is also there. Neptune at that point will, of course, be out of the retrograde because that's happening later in the evening on the 7th of December. So by this time, the fog should have lifted, if that's resonating for you, okay? But here we've got this encouragement to really look at those aspects of where we've come from and where we're going, okay? Which is, Mars is helping us look at this, but Mars is having to feel these things because he's back in Cancer at this point. So, okay, I've got to now just look and recap as part of my retrograde. I've got to look at where I've come from and where things have not been fair or balanced, and how that's informing me to move forward on my path towards sovereignty. Okay, and it all stems from that Mars energy of that drive to take action. But in Cancer, there is a nurturing to this. So needing to nurture ourselves through this discovery, and also understand that we need to feel the feelings. And there is more challenging energy here, okay, with the squares, the sesqui-square and the semi-square, than there is harmonious aspects. But the harmonious aspects point towards our purpose and laying that foundation. So that's quite pivotal for us. But we need to address the shadow aspects where we have not felt that things have, you know, perhaps not been fair. So where we have felt that things have not been fair or reciprocal or balanced, and having to look at that in conjunction with our sacred flame energy. So perhaps what or who has inspired us and the depth of that, because Vesta is in Scorpio. It's the home and hearth energy. So what sparks that flame within us, and having to look at that and why we've maybe not pursued it or taken action on it before. Is it because of those shadow aspects? Because perhaps we've tried to do it before, things have come up that have not been fair, or there's not been kind of that divine justice around it. So it's created these shadow wounds that we've now got to address to bring that back into harmony. There's also with Lilith those deep desires to look at. So where we really want to bring that kind of fairness and reciprocity into a situation, we have to acknowledge what our deep desires are when it comes to our sacred flame. And perhaps because Mars in Cancer, we've got to feel that. We've got to feel that within the masculine essence, which is uncomfortable, because perhaps we've missed out on opportunities in the past because we've neglected what we've truly wanted to do, or what we've wanted to pursue, and therefore we've not taken action. So we're feeling that now. The semi-square to Jupiter is still saying, again, I'll remind you, there's still growth happening because it's a retrograde. So there's inner expansion going on all the time. But Jupiter and Gemini, okay, do we need to look at things from a couple of different perspectives here to understand why that might have happened? What have the challenges been? What do I need to learn from this? Do I need to apply a bit of logic to this? So it's looking at that. And also the sesqui-square to Saturn. What am I still being taught about this situation? And how does that feel? Well, it's going to feel slightly challenging because we've got a sesqui square. So Saturn could be teaching us and showing us where we have perhaps neglected our sacred flame energy, our creative inspiration, what truly sparks that flame within, because we've chosen to do something else that maybe hasn't been balanced with us. So we've neglected that side of us, and now we're having to feel it, look at something from a couple of different perspectives and understand, right, how can I address this to then move this forward on my path? Well, get in touch with my intuition, get in touch with that source energy within is one thing, and make sure that I am closing out those cycles in order to lay that fair foundation, because we've got the vertex point there as well at the tail end of Virgo. So cleaning things up, that's Virgo energy. Virgo likes to be in control, likes to get things structured and sorted, a bit like Saturn, but you know, it's more of a Hoover aspect to Virgo, cleaning things up. Okay. And there is a perfectionist trait there as well. So, but at the end of a cycle. So it's kind of like, let's clean things up in order to lay this fair foundation. And that is where, you know, the harmonious aspect is to close out the karma and to close out these cycles that haven't been fair. And to, even if it's cycles that we've created because we've not believed in ourselves. Okay, so it's addressing that. And that's where, you know, Mars at 29 degrees, the anoretic degree, the intense degree, could be feeling that. And that's why it feels challenging to address. Okay. And then if we fast forward again some time, is it this one? Yeah, this is when he stations direct in Cancer. So we fast forward again now to the 24th of February, 2 a.m. GMT. Apply your own time zones as appropriate. So for some people, it's going to be the 23rd of February. Just bear that in mind. So a lot going on. And notice there's a lot pointing towards Mars. If you look at it like an arrow, like I was kind of alluding to before. But here we've got Mars in Cancer at 17 degrees. This is when he stations direct, okay? And I'll show you the UK's chart in a moment because he would have moved houses, and so that's quite profound in itself. Jupiter is out of retrograde at this point. So is Uranus. So we've got that movement forward from the planets that have come out of retrograde. Of course, Mercury will have been out at that point as well. So, you know, there is that momentum building. And at this point, the nodes have changed because you can see South node is now in Virgo and the North node is now in Pisces. There's a lot of Pisces energy because at this point it will be Pisces season. So the sun is there as well. Okay. So we have got down here, we've still got Pluto in a conjunction of sorts, this time with Pallas. And Pallas is all about that warrior spirit, fighting for what you want, but also strategizing as well, okay, but from a warrior spirit perspective. So there is that energy going into this profound transformation. What are we willing to fight for in terms of our new reality? The moon's in Capricorn, not the best place because it's opposite to its home of Cancer. So that can feel quite harsh on our emotions. We might want to block out our emotions. And of course, Mars being in Cancer, that's encouraging us to feel the emotions that we don't want to feel. So that can feel quite intense for a start. We're in Pisces season. There is that ethereal, mystical energy to it, but also sensitivities. So just bear that in mind. Now we've got opposition to the moon. Okay, so that is that energy with our emotions, and the Capricorn moon is just not comfortable. The moon is at detriment in that position. So that's going to be harsh on the feelings because there is that realization, you know, he stations direct, it's time to move forward. We've got the vertex point there as well. It's almost fated, destined, go time. But the moon is saying, don't like how this feels, to be honest with you. And that can create that challenge energy. Now, we've also got a square that's going to Chiron in Aries and a square to Lilith. So again, those feelings of the shadow aspects and having to address these things and how that's impacted the healing journey. Perhaps we feel a bit less than, perhaps we don't feel like a sovereign spirit at this moment in time because we've had to really go within and feel those feelings that we haven't wanted to face, and the shadow aspects. So it highlights challenging energy. There's also some minor challenging energy with the sesqui squares to Juno, who's now in Sag at this point, 0 degrees, and also Ceres. So that's feminine energy. So Mars in sesqui square to the feminine energy there. And this is kind of saying, right, we've got to commit to the self here in terms of the direction in which we want to shoot that bow and arrow. We've got to commit to the path. We've got to commit. There is commitment energy here to that. There could also be soul contracts in the mix here. That could be needing to sort of motivate us forward, but there's some challenging energy to that. Now, Juno being at 0 degrees and Ceres at 0 degrees, of course, this is why they're in sesqui square to Mars in this particular position, but they're also in square as a result of that. So there is this sort of newness, because it's like a new cycle, and Ceres is kind of in Pisces now, and it's almost the spiritual seeds that you're wanting to plant with regards to this reality and the nurturing energy. And Mars maybe doesn't want to feel this nurturing energy because he's had enough of it, because he's in Cancer and he's had enough of it. But this is about now utilizing the spiritual essence within and that motivational essence of both Pisces and Sagittarius, who, by the way, both have a connection with Jupiter, because Jupiter rules Sag and used to rule Pisces before Neptune was discovered. So there is definitely a spiritual essence to the growth that's going on here. But of course, it's challenging the masculine essence, okay, because of what I've just mentioned. Now, positively, there is a grand water trine here. So Mars is there, of course, vertex point we know. And then we've got Vesta and Poseidon in an exact conjunction at 16 degrees. And we've also got down here, we have got Mercury and Saturn. Okay. So that's a harmonious aspect there, water energy. So there is that flow. But the cardinal energy here, the energy that starts things off, is Cancer. So that is where Mars is. So what needs to start off the flow is the masculine energy. And if the masculine energy is feeling challenged from a sovereign perspective, because he's had to feel the feels and go within, and also challenged by the shadow aspects coming up, well, that can then, you know, make it feel challenging, which is why we've got that opposition to the moon. It can feel challenging, but there is a harmonious flow with the trine, the grand water trine, if Mars can start things off, okay, in order to communicate from that place of the soul, Mercury in Pisces, and that comes from a very sort of empathic place as well. But also Saturn, you know, let's get us in alignment with our spiritual truth here and understand that these lessons that we've been learning, these tests that we've had to face, particularly during the Mars retrograde as well, because of what I've shown you with the charts, has allowed this stuff to come up to the surface. And yes, it might not have felt easy because we've had to feel our feelings, and we've still got some challenging energy here to pay attention to. But if we're aware of it, we can work with the energy. And by the way, you know, we've got free will. This is just about aligning with the energy that's available, that's supported by the planetary bodies. But we've got free will, so we don't have to, you know, this is just aligning with the energy. So if it's resonating that, you know, during the Mars retrograde, there's quite a lot of tests or certain things coming up to the surface to pay attention to, well, it's quite harmonious here because there's a trine. So yeah, there might still be stuff we need to pay attention to, but actually we are able to then get things moving again. And also with Poseidon and Vesta in the mix, the sacred flame, uncovering that from the depth, Scorpio energy, transforming in that way as well. But Poseidon shaking up the water where it's needed. This is fixed energy though. This is Scorpio energy. The mutable energy that flows is Pisces. So our communication can flow, the Saturnian lessons can flow, what we've understood from Saturnian's lessons, but we need to understand what our sacred flame is, that direction in which we're heading, like I've said, being committed to the path, Juno in Sag at this point, and how the action that we take based on what we've had to feel can allow things to shift and move. And Poseidon will shake up the waters if we need it to be shaken up. There is opposition between Poseidon and Vesta with Uranus, so we still need to feel worthy of all of this. I've got ringing in my ear as I'm saying that as well. So we do need to feel worthy of this in order to allow the flow to happen. But it's driven from the masculine essence. If the masculine essence within can feel comfortable enough to feel those feelings, to feel what's coming up, to not be kind of rooted off course of the healing journey of sovereignty, to understand that actually, yes, it might feel challenging, but it is still empowering us to move forward with that essence of sovereignty. okay, to not lose that from the challenging feelings. Shadows have to be addressed, deep desires have to be addressed, but that is part of our healing journey. We need to understand that we are now looking at the action that we can take based on what we've had to feel. And that might be uncomfortable, but it's going to show us what we need to see. Okay. I think lastly as well, I will timestamp all of this, obviously, is just to show you that the moment Mars stations direct in Cancer, he will then be in the 12th house. So he started off in the first house of the self. This is going back into that subconscious area, and this is where it can feel uncomfortable, because we're having to go within and really understand those hidden elements within that maybe we've not wanted to address. And certainly that opposition energy to the moon in the 6th house there is kind of like, well, okay, in our day-to-day way of being, things have had to change. I've had to feel these things coming up about how my day-to-day world, how my day-to-day reality is, and also how I am of service to people, and feeling those feelings, okay, in relation to all of that. But this grand trine is between the 12th, 9th and 5th house. So it's definitely still something we're discovering. It's definitely something related to that heart space and our expression, excuse me, from the heart space, and also the subconscious elements within us as well. That connection with our soul, that connection with the spiritual side of us, but understanding it's water energy, and we do need to embody the feelings at this point. Hopefully the Pisces energy of that zodiac season will help us, but remember, Mars, you know, wants to take action and has had to feel these things. So there needs to be some understanding from that Piscean empathic way, that we've had to go through this. Okay, so it's about nurturing ourselves, but understanding that everything that's been coming up during his retrograde has shown us what we need to focus on in order to move forward on our path. Okay, right. I'm going to end it there. Okay, so I will timestamp this, of course. I've got no cards to pull on this occasion, but yeah, hopefully, you know, you're all doing okay and you're navigating these shifts and everything that's coming up. But there is a lot, obviously, in the energy, and we are about to embark on this Mars retrograde. So yeah, it's about nurturing ourselves through this process, but understanding where we might need to find that courage within, where we might need to address aspects of ourselves that don't want to be seen or recognized, because that's what we're healing as well on our journey. Ultimately, we've got to feel worthy of that, and to make sure that where we're investing that Venus energy is in alignment with our worth and our values, and also in accordance with this new reality that we're trying to carve out for ourselves, because ultimately that's the action that we're going to be taking, but we need to get things in line first of all. And I think it's very significant that came up for me, and it was more like a channeled message that came through at the time of looking at that chart of actually how these things are coming up, and that realization as we're evolving, we've got a deeper and wider understanding and appreciation of what we're going through, and also where we still need to learn some lessons. So that's actually that wisdom that's coming through. It's acknowledgement that, okay, I still got to learn a little bit about this. I still need to discover something about this situation before I can move on. That's showing maturity, spiritual maturity, because it's not like, right, okay, I know this is coming up, but I'm just going to move forward anyway, and I'm just going to ignore it, because that is not going to work. This is about the appreciation of it. And that's what I could see. So I feel like that's in the energy for us to align with, but it's all about free will, of course. Everybody's on their own path, and we've all got different, you know, situations to navigate. But if it's resonating with you, this is about holding on to the truth of who you are as that authentic soul essence, and not being afraid to express yourself for who you are. This introspection is going within to help you understand the courage that's needed, the steps that need to be put in place to then propel yourself forward on your path, but with that kind of vibrancy of the courageous lion energy and the, you know, desire to be seen and recognized, but knowing that you're worthy of that as well. Okay, so sending you all the best, and I'll be back with obviously further reports soon. Take care, and I will see you next time. All the best.